Shalom. Welcome to the Shepherd's Light Online Church. Before the service starts, we wanted to invite you to join our chat. The chat is where you can ask questions, share verses, and connect with other viewers from around the world. Just write your first comment and choose a nickname to join. If you need prayer, click the live prayer icon and you'll be taken to a private chat where one of our team members will pray with you. The service is about to start. Don't forget to sign up so you can keep your username and profile. God bless you and enjoy the message.
You go before I know that you've even gone to win my war. You come back at the head of my enemy. You come back and you call it my victory. You go before I know that you've even gone to win my war. Your love is my greatest defense. It leads me from the dry wilderness, and all I did was praise. All I did was worship. All I did was bow down. Oh, all I did was stay still. My heart can seek to find your truth. Your mercy is the shade I'm living in. You restore my faith and hope again. And all I did was praise. All I did was worship. When I thought I lost me, you knew where I left. all I did was praise. All I did was worship. Lord, I'm gonna bow down. I'm just gonna stay still. I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Is where we're going to be tonight. Now, as we go through this, we'll kind of do this in the old school way. We're going to go through a few verses, then we're going to talk about those. And as we talk about them, we're going to be talking about the life of Jacob. Now, I know I've taught before on the life of Jacob. Pastor Christian Sly and I did a 2-part series one time on the life of Jacob, and he took where Jacob wrestles with the Lord. I didn't know when we took those, Pastor Jason asked us to do something together, so we said, hey, how about the life of Jacob? And I said, good. Just trying to be courteous to him, I said, well, what part do you want to take about the life of Jacob? And he goes, oh, with the part where Jacob wrestles with the Lord. I go, cool, I'll take the other part. I found out later the other part was 6 chapters long. Okay, so I very quickly, I had an extra cup of coffee that day. Went through it and everything, but ironically, that's the chapter that we're in tonight. And we're not talking about him wrestling with the Lord so much. So anyway, let's just go through this, and I'm going to stop periodically as we read some verses, and then we'll talk about those. But I'd like to talk to you today about power in the silence. You know, there's times in our lives, not nearly as many as there used to be, when we have a moment of silence, when we don't have any electronics trying to get our attention, when the TV's not blaring, when we're not on our way somewhere, when the schedule is all messed up and we're late as usual and we're hurrying and you got 5 people trying to get your attention over here. Maybe you got kids, you got other people here, then there's the jobs, all of this stuff. There's no real silence in our lives anymore. But do you realize that there's power in those times alone with the Lord? There's power in those times, even when you're going through trials. And sometimes you may think, well, that's the only time I really get those serious times alone with the Lord, is when I've got something I just don't know how to fix. And it's a real serious problem, and I got to get alone with the Lord. But the sad commentary, of course, is it had to get that bad before you actually did what we're supposed to do all the time. Get alone with the Lord. You know, Jesus had times when he was with the disciples, and the New Testament made the commentary that he would go up to the mountain and pray all night. I think even that time when they went out on the boat and everything, and he said, oh, you go ahead, I'll meet you later. Well, if you've ever been to the Sea of Galilee, usually where the boats launch, it's up at the northern 25 or 30-something% of the lake, and it's roughly about 5 miles wide, about 6 to 10 miles long, depending on what part you measure. And so it's easy enough to walk around the northern shore of the lake to get to the other side. On the Kinneret. That's what the Jewish people call the Galilee. It's HaKinneret. Actually, your Bible says that word once, I think, or maybe twice even. And so you can walk around there. But the interesting thing is, after he's stayed there till late at night, they're out in the Sea of Galilee on the boat, just trying to make it to the other side. He comes walking up. He could have taken another boat. He was famous. He could have taken and had a boat taxi take him out to meet the other boat, but he chose to walk. And, oh, by the way, did I mention they're in the water and he's walking? So he's walking on the water, but he wanted to even spend more time than the time that he had spent hanging back there. He wanted to spend more time just slowly walking along, talking to the Heavenly Father. And I look at that, and maybe you can remember back 20 or 30 years. Maybe some of you are too young to remember 30 years back. Maybe some of you are too old to remember 30 years back. I don't know. But basically, there were times when we didn't have electronics. I remember I was in business, had a high-tech company in California. I had to drive up to the Bay Area all the time as an engineer in Silicon Valley, consultant, this and that and everything. And I had one of the first cell phones. It was about the size of a sewing machine. You put it on your console, and to have this cell phone, you'd pay $1,500 a month. And if you talk more than the 20 minutes allotted, then you would pay more. They were such a status symbol. I remember being an engineer at one place up in Silicon Valley, and one of the managers there had a Toyota. But everybody was concerned with prestige and status, and he took the badge off the Toyota and put a BMW badge on the hood. No lies, no lies. I've seen people driving down the freeway talking on their cell phone back in the mid-'80s. And I actually met the guy who invented the cell phone, by the way, in my travels electronically. No, I didn't teleport or anything, but you know what I mean. Okay, so basically, he was talking on the phone driving down 101 freeway there along the west side of the bay in San Francisco, and he didn't know it, but the cord hanging off of his cell phone was hanging out the window. It wasn't even connected to anything. But he had the prestige, I guess, so. All right, Stephen, 5 minutes in and you're lost already. So anyway, silence is something that is kind of a lost thing in our society today. But back when, 25, 30 years ago, you had times where you could get quiet, where you could think, especially in technical occupations. You needed that time thing. You couldn't Google things. You couldn't do that. You had to figure it out for yourself. And some of those things required real thought. And sometimes you were chasing problems that took 3-4 weeks and had 40 other engineers waiting on you to come up with an answer. And our leaders, our directors, and some of the companies that I worked for had this bad habit for not only scheduling projects, but scheduling invention. You don't schedule invention. It's kind of an engineering thing, You can't schedule invention. Invention just happens. Yeah, maybe it happens. But you can't base your project on the hope that you will come up with something that for the past few hundred years no one's ever thought of before. And so anyway, that was kind of tough, so it required a lot of silence. Well, this chapter today is talking about that kind of silence. Silence during the trial. Silence when you spend your time getting alone with the Lord. It says in chapter 32 of the book of Genesis and verse 1, and now if you hear me go back and forth to Hebrew, I'll say be, ivrit, be is in, ivrit is Hebrew. So sometimes you'll hear me say Bevrit or Beanglit in English. It's because I'm a confused individual. And the reason why I'm telling you that is Jacob in Hebrew is Yaakov. They don't have a J sound in Hebrew. They use a Y sound anyway. My grandfather's name, my Jewish grandfather, was Jacob. And all the guys' names in our family, it was Yaakov, it was Yosef, Ada was an aunt, all Jewish names in my family because I grew up in a Jewish family, but since they were all from Texas, we didn't know anything about what that meant, so. But we were bilingual, though. We spoke Texan and English. So we tried to assimilate somewhat, But anyway, it says in verse 1, so Yaakov went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Yaakov saw them, he said, this is God's camp. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Mahanaim means camp in Hebrew, Bevrit. But then we get down to verse 3. Now look at what he's doing. Then Yaakov sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, in the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, his servants, saying, speak thus to my lord Esau, thus your servant Yaakov says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find favor in your sight. Now let's pause there. Got to give you a little bit of background. Yaakov was born to Rebekah, Isaac's wife. Isaac was the son of Abraham. He was the miracle child of Abraham that Abraham had when he was 100 years of age, and Sarah, his wife, had when she was 90 years of age. Total miracle. God had promised that child 25-something years and everything. Finally, they had that child. No one expected that. Total miracle. And then when Isaac got of age, it was the custom at that time for the father, that father being Abraham at that time, he would send one of his trusted servants to a place to find a wife for his son. Well, Abraham lived in Canaan. God had already made the promise to give him that land at the time. Everywhere his foot tread, north and south, east and west, everywhere his eyes could see, God made the promise to give him that land. He had said to Abraham, in you and your seed, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed. And actually, he even made that promise before he even had seed, before Isaac was even born. And here he was 100 years of age. And as he got close to 100 years of age, in fact, he told the Lord, oh Lord, well, good, you're going to bless my son Ishmael through our maidservant Hagar. And God said, no. He said, I'll take care of him, but you're going to have your own son through Sarah, your wife. Okay, well, now she's 90, now he's 100. Actually, at one time or another, they both laughed when they considered it. They weren't really laughing at God's ability to pull it off. They were just laughing because nothing like that had ever happened. And what are they going to tell people when they see this new child that they've got? Oh, how cute, a little baby. Is that one of your cousin's children or something? No, actually, we had that child last month. Oh, okay. No, really, where did the child come from, But how do you explain that, So they're just kind of chuckling as they're thinking ahead and everything. But Isaac comes along, and when he gets of age, Abraham chooses one of his trusted servants, and he doesn't want his son to have a wife from the land of Canaan, because you see, they worshiped idols there. They had terrible customs. Some of them had customs of even killing their children and making themselves walk through fire because they thought that that's what their idol gods wanted them to do. And Abraham didn't want his son learning any of that junk. And so he sent his servant far away to the place where he had come from. He had come from Ur of the Chaldeans. He sent his servant to the place where he had relatives. And at that time, Nahor was one of the relatives that he had. He had a son named Laban. Laban's sister was Rebekah. And the servant found Rebekah at this place far away and asked her, and they prayed about it, and they sent Rebekah back to marry Isaac sight unseen. That's how people like me have to be married, you see. In about 1 month and, don't tell me, 14 days, yes, minus 6. My wife and I will be married 46 years. I'm sorry, I said I was an engineer, okay? So that's what I do. But anyway, 46 years. I look back and, knowing what she knows now, would she have married me? Probably not, It probably had to have been a classified ad, black and white, no pictures allowed, something like that. That's what we had, before these dating sites and things like this. But anyway, the servant brings back Rebekah, the sister of Laban, to meet Isaac, and she becomes Isaac's wife. At that time, Laban and the rest of the family there that were Rebekah's family up in Padan Aram, that's how you say where they were, Padan Aram, and basically they thought that this guy Abraham, was really wealthy. They knew him. He was a relative. But they didn't know he was so wealthy. He had hundreds and hundreds of people that joined themselves to him. Many had been born in his house, maidservants, male servants, all hundreds of people who had joined themselves to him because he was a very generous, loving master, and he would take care of everyone. So they felt like one big family there. And so they heard a lot about him and everything. Well, Laban is watching this while his sister Rebekah packs up and takes off to go with this servant back to marry Abraham's son, Yitzchak, or Isaac, as you would say in English. And so he takes her back. She marries him, and then later she has twins. Well, let's not use the word twins. She has two boys at the same time. One's called Esau. He's covered with hair, head to toe. Probably like Bigfoot, something. I don't know. But anyway. He's covered with hair, head to toe. But Jacob was a smooth man, the Bible says. And from the beginning, Esau came out first, but it turns out that Jacob, his little brother, came out a couple of minutes later, and he was holding on to Esau's heel. So they named him Heel Catcher or Supplanter. He's the one that's trying to mess things up and trying to come out first. It's all about being first to him. It's all about being the one in power to him. And back in those days, the one who was born first had almost twice again as much inheritance as the one who was younger, you see. But Jacob did come out second. But then later on in life, Jacob had grown up, Esau had grown up. Jacob was in the kitchen making some souffle or something. I don't know what it was. No, soup. There it was. And it was a red soup, probably a lentil soup or something like that. Esau was a hunter. He was a man's man, in the good way, the old way, okay. But anyway, he would go out hunting and bring all of this game back to feed his father Isaac, and Isaac really liked the taste of this stuff. Okay? And so Esau had gone out into the field one time. It was hunting. He came back. He's really tired. Jacob's in the kitchen whipping something up. It's a soup. Esau is very hungry, about to faint with hunger, in fact. And he tells his brother Jacob, give me some of that soup. Jacob says, sell me your birthright. Sell me your birthright. Wait a minute, Jacob. That's not a very godly thing. It's supposed to be a godly family here. Your brother's about to faint and you want him to sell you his birthright for a cup of soup? Yeah, that's not the way God works. God would give it to him just because he's hungry, and we're told to do that, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. It says in Matthew 25, But anyway, Jacob tries to take advantage of the situation, take advantage of his brother's hunger. And so eventually Esau says, well, what good is a birthright if I die of hunger? So he sells him his birthright, gives him the birthright. Now, Jacob didn't steal that. Was he unethical? Oh yeah, he was unethical, but he didn't steal it. Well, then later in life, though, he gets wind of the fact that his father Isaac is going to bless the older because Isaac's now getting old. He doesn't know how much longer he's going to be around. And it was the custom, it was the tradition at that time for the father to bless the oldest child, you see. But it was powerful. In fact, all the blessings that had happened up to that point, there were also things spoken about the future of the oldest child, and they knew from Abraham and they knew from other people in their society that when the patriarch of the family blessed the oldest child, even prophesying about the things that would happen in the future for them, they came true. So this was a powerful, powerful thing to have, the blessing of the father. Problem was, Isaac was just about totally blind. Couldn't see anything anymore. Couldn't tell which son was there, except for one thing. Esau was a hunter. He wore clothes that smelled like the field, that smelled like the outdoors. Jacob didn't smell like that. And Esau had the hair all on the back of his neck and all over his body and everything. Jacob was a smooth guy. But Jacob's mother, Rebekah, Isaac's wife, said, listen, I heard your father is going to be blessing Esau. You've got to get that blessing instead. He was her favorite. But Esau was Isaac's favorite. So basically, she comes up with a plan. She says, well, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out there to the flock. I'm going to take a kid goat. I'm going to scrape some hair off of that as I'm preparing that goat and everything. And you're going to put that on the back of your hand, on the back of your neck. And you're going to go in there and pretend to be Esau, so that your father will give you the blessing instead. He said, well, I'm smooth, my brother is hairy. Well, here's this goat skin. It's going to be on you and everything. Well, what about my voice? Well, wing it. Do the best you can. But here's some of Esau's clothing. Here's one of his coats. Put this on you, and now you're going to smell like Esau too. Well, sure enough, he goes in, he lies to his father Isaac, straight up tells him a lie, and just says, Isaac says, are you really my son Esau? And Jacob says, I am. I'm your son Esau. I'm the one you're supposed to bless. That's what he was saying. So finally, reluctantly, Isaac brings him over, feels the hair on the back of his neck from the goat skin, though, smells Esau's clothing, goes, oh yeah, you're Esau. I smell the great outdoors there. You're the hunter Esau, my son, who's the great hunter and everything. And so he starts blessing him, and he gives him this blessing. And then Rebekah had made some food, and she made it like Esau knows how to prepare it, and he thought Esau had prepared that food. So when she gave him the food, he was even more convinced that he had just blessed Esau. But no sooner had Jacob gone out of the room, out of the house, than the Esau really comes in and says, okay, I've made you some food, and I now bless me. And his father says, what? Well, who was just in here because I blessed him instead? And even Isaac knew that once he blessed whatever son it was before the Lord, he knew that it was irrevocable. He knew that that would happen. And so Jacob had been blessed instead of Esau. So now Jacob, who wouldn't feed his brother, but required him to give him his birthright before he fed him a bowl of red stew. And then now he's lied to his father about who he is, and he's stolen Esau's blessing as the oldest boy in the family. And Esau swears that as soon as his father dies, he's going to kill his brother Jacob. His mother heard that rumor going around. She told Jacob, you better get out of here. Sent him all the way to Padan Aram 20 years later, after serving 7 years for his first wife, who he thought was Rachel, but Laban, Rebekah's brother, actually gave him the other daughter instead. He didn't know it because it was nighttime, and that was the custom. You don't see anything, you see, on your wedding night. And then he worked 7 more years for Rachel, as you would say in English. And then he worked 7 more years to have some flock from Laban. 20 years total. 6 more years for the flocks. 20 years total he worked there. And then on the way to where he is in Genesis 32, he has just run from Laban, who's running and chasing him. Jacob has all these flocks. He's got his 2 wives, and he's got now 12 children, 1 daughter and 11 sons at this point. And all of these things, the flocks and animals, and they're moving pretty slow. Laban gets a bunch of men and his sons. They chase after him. Jacob's worried. He knows that Laban can kill him and take all of these things back because it's amounted to quite a bit of flocks, you see. And not only that, but God blessed the flocks that Jacob had taken care of. And he did not bless the flocks that belonged to Laban, even though Jacob was tending those flocks as well. So Laban felt real bad about this. He felt that Jacob had stole all of his wealth in his flocks. They were agriculturalists. They were shepherds at that time. That's how they made their living. So this was important to him. He had been a wealthy man, but now Jacob comes along, and at first he's happy with the job that Jacob is doing, but then he sees that God is blessing Jacob and with his own part of the flock, and that Laban's part of the flock is not growing anymore. So Laban is angry. He doesn't know what's happening. He changes the rules about what part Jacob would own and what part he would own. Changed it over and over again. Every time he did, the Lord would change the way he worked to where he was still blessing Jacob, but not Laban, because Laban was treating Jacob deceitfully, you see. And no sooner than had Laban reached where Jacob was, and Jacob was fearful of meeting up with Laban. He didn't have men to fight for him like that. But God, the night before Laban was to come over and talk to Jacob, warned Laban in a dream. So Laban came over. That danger passed. He let Jacob go. They had an agreement that no one would hurt each other anymore in the future, and he would treat his daughters right in their marriages. And now, after all that's taken care of, he's got to go back 20 years later where his brother Esau had threatened to kill him. He was going to murder his brother Jacob. Esau was going to murder Jacob. He hears that Esau is on his way to meet him. And so we see this, and this is the context for this. And so he knows that Esau may still be angry about what happened 20 years earlier, you see. And so he sends a message to Esau in verse 5, I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male and female servants. And I've sent to tell you, my lord Esau, that I may find favor in your sight. He's trying to appease him. But then look at what it says in verse 6. Those same messengers that Jacob said, oh yeah, we met up with him. And we got to him and we saw your brother Esau. And oh, by the way, he's coming to meet you. And he has 400 men with him. 400 men. Now, I don't know what you know about guys and girls, but men are usually kind of loners. Unless they're in a gang or an army or something like that, and they've got business to take care of. They don't just hang out together like that, unless we're talking about a football team, baseball team, whatever. But basically, you don't saddle up with 400 guys and travel to meet your brother unless you've got some bad intentions. That's what I'm saying. So the messengers returned. They told Jacob that. Now look at verse 7. Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people up that were with him, and the flocks and the herds of camels, and he divided them into 2 companies. No, not corporations, 2 groups of people. And he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, the other company which is left will be able to escape, maybe, you see. And then Jacob said, now, before we get into what Jacob then said to the Lord and him seeking the Lord, I want you to notice his first reaction was to make a plan to avoid the danger. His first reaction was to use his own human wisdom and reasoning and his own abilities to try to make a plan to make Esau's attack of no effect. And he thinks, he knows he's at a disadvantage. He doesn't have 400 guys that are willing to fight with him. He's got goats and sheep, and they don't do war, except among each other at dinner time. So now it says that he's coming up with this plan. These are Jacob's plans, the plans of human wisdom and reasoning. But then he says in verse 9 then Jacob said, now Jacob is alone with the Lord now. Then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant. For I crossed over this Jordan River to go there to Laban's place to get his wives and all like that first. I crossed over this Jordan River with just my staff, and now I become 2 companies of people. And then he gets right down to the business in verse 11. He says, deliver me, I pray. Deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, because I fear him, Lord. I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the wives and the children. I fear him, God. He's pouring out his heart to the Lord. Now keep in mind, he had only met the Lord when he went out there to begin with. The Lord appeared to him. He didn't ask to meet with the Lord. The Lord appeared to him. There was a ladder between earth and heaven. Angels were descending, ascending. The Lord was at the top. He said, I'm the Lord God, and I'm calling you to do this. The Lord introduced himself to Yaakov, to Jacob, on the way out to Padan Aram. And now he's on his way back 20 years later. He knows that God has blessed him. He knows that God spoke to Laban the night before Laban was to meet him and somehow kept him safe from that danger. But now the far greater danger is going to arrive in the morning. And Jacob sees this and he tries to make a plan. And he pours out his heart to God like he's never poured out his heart before. Lord, he wants to destroy me, but he'll destroy my wives. He'll destroy my children. He'll destroy my family. All these people that I love, and they're counting on me. They're counting on me to somehow protect them. But what am I, Lord? Who am I that I can protect them? I heard my grandfather Abraham would cry out to you, and you would answer his prayers. I heard my father Isaac had heard from you, and you had given him your blessing. And now you've introduced yourself to me, Lord. So God, I don't know what to say except just to talk to you about what's on my heart. Help me. Please help me. Don't let him kill my family. Don't let him kill my wives and my children. I know he's angry at me, Lord, for what he's done. I've done all of these things wrong, but God, you are good. And you've dealt with me in mercy and truth all of this time. So he lodged there that same night, it says in verse 13 of chapter 32. And he took what came to his hand as a present for Esau, his brother. Amazon doesn't make deliveries out to the middle of the field. Walmart doesn't do online shopping out there where he was. There were no cities. There were no city lights. He was all alone. He took whatever he had, and he was a shepherd. All he had was these things, sheep, goats, things like that. He took whatever came to his hand to turn it into a present for Esau, his brother, trying to appease him. They gathered up 200 female goats and 20 male goats, it says in verse 14. 200 ewes and 20, not ewes, but, the animals, okay. Where was I, Stephen? Stay on track. Okay, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 foals. Then he delivered them to the hands of his servants, every drove by itself. And he said to his servants, pass over before me, go before me, he's saying, put some distance between yourself and the ones that I'm going to send right behind you, between successive droves. And he commanded the first one, saying, when Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong, and where are you going? Whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servant Yaakov's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau. And behold, he also is behind us, coming to meet you, you see. So he commanded the second and the third group as well, and all who followed the drove, saying, in this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him. Verse 20 then, he says, and also say, behold, your servant Yaakov is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the presents that go before me. And afterward, I'll see his face, and maybe then he won't be angry anymore. Maybe then he'll accept me. So the present went on over before him, but he himself lodged in the camp at night. Now I want you, in the eyes of your imagination, to imagine the camp at night. We're not talking about Camp Runnin' Fun up in Idlewild. We're not talking about a camp like that. This is just where they happen to sleep. On the way out, he found a rock to use as his pillow. His bed was the dirt. The ambience of the environment were the stars up above. There were no city lights close by. There was nothing like that. And now he had sent these groups out, hoping that somehow he will appease his brother who's coming out to meet him with 400 men. 400 men. There's only one reason you would pack up 400 men and bring them with you. You're anticipating conflict. He knows that. He knows his brother. He figures, he reasons, his brother is still angry with him. And so it says he lodged there that same night, took whatever he could to make it his presents, and then he sent them on out. And we see then in verse 22, and here's where we're going to camp out for a while, as Pastor Jason says. And he arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, his 11 sons, and his daughter, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them over the brook and sent over what he had. He put them on the other side of the water. Then Yaakov was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. A man wrestled with him till the breaking of day. Everyone else has been sent away. He's made his own plans. He's revised his own plans. He's added to his plans. He's found out that his brother is bringing 400 men with him. He has no assurance that he's not going to be dead tomorrow. He has no assurance that his wives and children are going to survive daylight tomorrow. And he's left alone by himself under the night skies. And it says he wrestled with a man. He can't get sleep thinking those things. He wrestled with a man, it says. We find out later in these verses that man was God himself. Can God become a man? Is anything too hard for God? Of course he can. But it's interesting how we see this conflict happening. It says he wrestled with a man. Well, what provoked this wrestling match? What provoked all of this animosity? Well, there was no animosity. He was wrestling with the Lord, as you're going to find out in a few verses. But what were they wrestling about? I think you're going to find that Yaakov is wrestling with trusting his own plans and his own methods and his own thoughts and his own ways, or just letting go of it all and trusting this God whom he's met. That's what he's wrestling with. He wrestles with the Lord, and the Lord has somehow become a physical man at that time. We see this as Jesus Christ, because he had become a man later. He could become a man then, and he has other times when he appeared even to Abraham in chapter 18 of the book of Genesis as a man. He was accompanied by 2 angels at that time. So yes, he can become a man temporarily if you want. Abraham worshiped him as the Lord, but said that 3 men were there, 2 angels and this one whom he called the Lord. So yes, God can become a man. But it says he wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Verse 25. Now when this man, the Lord, saw that he did not prevail against Yaakov, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Now, we don't know a lot about the detail here, but it seems to me he saw that he did not prevail with him. What he was trying to prevail with him was Jacob trust God. And apparently he couldn't prevail with Jacob at that time. Then, even though he's having a wrestling match with him and Jacob is somehow holding his own, this man touches Jacob's hip and now it's out of joint. And later it's going to talk about the muscle that shrank. Well, the hip is held in the socket by a surrounding of muscles, just like your rotator cuff is a surrounding group of muscles that holds in your arm to the shoulder joint. It's the same thing. And so he shrunk this muscle to where the hip bone could now come out of joint there. So basically what we're saying is, here's Jacob wrestling with the Lord. It's an even playing field. The Lord has allowed himself to be handicapped with a human body, but now he just lets Jacob know who he's dealing with. Just, I'll take this. Boom. And now the hip's out of joint. Do you think that Jacob really beat the Lord? The one who spoke all things into existence, the one that flung 2.2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, each of those stars about 1 million times the size of the earth we live on, flung all of that out to the edge and ends of the universe. You think Jacob was actually beating the Lord? The Lord was just allowing this to happen, and then he touches the hip. What just happened? He took away Jacob's last line of trust in himself. His end-all plan, if nothing else worked, he could run. Now he wasn't going to run anywhere. He's got a dislocated hip joint. They didn't do hip replacements in those days. Did I mention that? So he touches that hip, and now it's out of joint. But now look at this. The man says to him, verse 26, "Let me go, because day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he says, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Well, wait a minute. How did you prevail? He wouldn't let go of the Lord until he blessed him. Let's talk about your prayer life. Do you treat those prayers as just something that you're in a hurry to do? Do you treat those prayers as just something, well, I'm busy, I've got to text somebody, I got to check my Facebook, I got a phone call. Lord, I don't have time to you. I want to tell you something. Out under the darkness of the stars, all alone, whether on the mountaintop or where Jacob was, pouring his heart out to God with no one else around, no distractions. That's a time of power in your spiritual life. There's power in that silence. And that's why it's so sad that we don't have so many moments of silence anymore. How many times do you hear, "Oh, I'm going through this, well, here, let me pray for you real quick." You're looking at your watch, "Oh yeah, well, Lord, just bless them and just take care of everything that's going on in their life." Okay, well, I got to run. See you later. How many times do you pour out your heart to God like your life depends upon it? Where's the silence in your life? Where's your silent times before the Lord? Be still and know that I am God. Where's your silent times before the Lord? And quietness and confidence shall be your strength, and in returning and rest you shall be saved, says the Lord. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. Do you have time for the Lord? No, I got to fire off this post on Instagram, but I'll get to it later. I got a Facebook, How many times have you been talking to people? I'm guilty too. How many times have you been talking to someone standing right there in front of you? Phone rings, and you're talking, "Oh, yeah. Oh. You look down and don't even say anything. A lot of times people don't say, "Oh." And the person's looking at you going like, "What's going on? Maybe I should call you, and then we could talk." We are so conditioned to obey any distraction that comes our way. Oh, shiny thing. Oh, a text. I'll be right with you. Let me get this. It's important. Yeah. Even the ones that aren't important. Oh, hang on. Where's your silent times in life? Or the devices that you use, and I designed them most of my adult life. It was a good living. Okay? Helped put my daughter through Bible college. We're all happy about that. But you have to have times alone with the Lord. You have to have times in silence, being still and knowing that He's God. Not just for a little while. Pour your heart out to Him. Talk about what's on your mind. Don't let go of Him. Don't let go of Him. I'm not going to let go of you until you bless me. Well, I know Jesus wants us to have faith. But He said in the New Testament, He said there was a wicked judge who didn't regard men or didn't regard God. He had no respect or regard for God or men. But this lady kept saying, avenge me of my adversary because I'm right, they're wrong. And she kept saying this. And finally He said, well, even though I don't regard God or men, lest she come to me and just wear me out, I'm going to give her what she's asking for. And then Jesus goes on to say, shall not your heavenly Father then, who is good, take care of His children that persist? Then He says something interesting. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will He find faith on the earth? It's good to ask by faith. But God does honor persistence. When's the last time you spent time before the Lord? You said to the Lord, finally, in that time of being alone with Him, in the darkness around you, silent times there, you said, I'm not letting go of you. I'm not letting go of you until you answer me. Help me. I need you. I need you. Will you help me? Help me. I understand I should be letting go. Here you are. I don't want to let go of you. You have the power to bless me. Bless me. And then look at what God did. He said, well, okay, what's your name? Jacob. Oh, wait a minute. Stephen, we're talking about God. Did He forget Jacob's name? What's the deal with that? He knew Jacob's name. He wanted Jacob to say his name because Jacob meant con man, deceiver, supplanter, liar. He says, from now on, you're not going to be called a liar, a deceiver, a con man. You're going to be called Israel, which means governed by God. What just happened? He convinced God to take care of the problems that he feared. He convinced God to take care of the dreaded return of Esau and keep him and his family and the children safe from danger. He convinced God to that, and God said, your name is now changed because you are governed by God, which is just another way of saying you're cared for by God. You're protected by God. You're kept by God. Your plans? Isn't it interesting? We're going to read in a few verses here. Isn't it interesting that when Esau finally comes, God didn't use any of Jacob's plans? All that elaborate gifts being one wave after the other and one wave and anything that came to hand and people bowing down and before Esau and everything and submitting to him and everything. God didn't use any of that. Because as we see, as we read on down, I'm getting ahead of myself. It says, then Israel's going to be your name. Then Jacob says in verse 29, well, tell me your name. He said, well, why is it that you ask about my name? Poof, and he's gone. He wasn't going to tell him. God didn't have time to tell him his name because God is, think of the time when God came before Moses and proclaimed the name of the Lord. All these wonderful, wonderful things, not just a word or two, but all these beautiful, wonderful things that God is, because like I've said before, in Hebrew, names mean something. Names mean something. And Israel meant governed by God. And it says in verse 32, really quick, 31, it says, then Jacob crossed over Penuel, and the sun rose on him. And he leapt on his hip. Now, that's kind of a bottom line right there. Okay, no sleep all night. Wrestled with God. Hips out of joint. What am I going to do now? Is that the sun coming up already? Esau's going to be here any minute. What am I going to do now? The sun's coming up and I can't run. Oh yeah. I'm now cared for by God. I don't know if he remembered it at that time. But then look at chapter 33, and we'll just go a few verses into that. Now Jacob, he crossed over the Penuel. The sun came up. He can't run. It's out of time. And verse 1 of chapter 33, now Yaakov lifted up his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming. Oh, and by the way, with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants that he also had children from, among the 11 sons and 1 daughter. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, it says in verse 2, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before him. Now, I want you to look at this. Then he crossed over before them. He had been behind them, preserving his own life, sending other people first. Now he's had a change of heart. And it says he went through them. He went straight through them. He went up to the front and decided that Esau would meet him first. He's got a changed heart now, you see. God has made him governed by God, so now he's doing the things that people who are governed by God do. They honor others above themselves. They consider themselves not as those in authority or ruling over somebody. They consider themselves as servants willing to lay down their lives for others. And the greatest in the kingdom will be a servant of all. So we see him going through the crowds, going up to the first, and then it says, he crossed over before them, bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Verse 4. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. What's going on here? You imagine? There's 400 guys saddled up ready for war. They say, yeah, there they are, Esau. Let's go get them. Let's go get them. Yeah, we've had our coffee this morning. It's day. We got daylight with us now. Let's get them now. Let's do this. Esau gets up there and he runs and falls on Jacob's neck, hugs and kisses his brother. And the guys are looking at each other going, what's going on here? I thought we came out for a war. What's going on here? Here's what's going on there. God changed Esau's heart on the way. Just like he changed Laban's heart on the way, he changed Esau's heart on his way. Did God use any of Yaakov's plans, the goats, the sheep, animals, all this, people prostrating themselves before? Did he use any of that? No. He just said, no, here's how I'm going to fix that. Just touch Esau's heart. Okay, all done. Next problem. Let God fight your battles for you. There's power in your silent times with the Lord. Don't lose those silent times. It's the most important thing you have, your relationship with the Heavenly Father. Your relationship with the Lord is the most important thing. Going to church is wonderful. Reading your Bible is wonderful. But don't you lose your time alone with the Lord. No matter how busy you think you are, if you're so busy that you have to sacrifice that time, you're too busy. That's not from the Lord. Out of all the things that you think you might be able to offer the Lord, well, I'm pretty good with music. I could do this for the Lord. Oh, I'm pretty good with fellowship. And guys, I can make steaks for the steak and study. I'm pretty good with this. I'm pretty good with... I've got some abilities here I can help with. The only ability He wants from you is availability. Are you available for the Lord? He wants you, not yours. He just wants time with His children. There's power in those silent times alone with the Lord. And I know, just like you know, how hard it is. Schedules never seem to work with us on that, right? Time that we're going to plan and put alone, set aside for being alone. How many times, how many ways does Satan try to attack that and make that not happen? But you've got to remember, you've got to say no. How can you do that? You can have silent times with the Lord, being all alone. But you know what? You can have silent times with the Lord in the middle of the storm. Someone's contending with you. There's a big time argument going on. You don't have to participate. You're the gatekeeper of your own heart. You just use that as a silent time. You pray for that person. You just look at those angry words, that angry face, and in your heart you're praying, God, help them. Help them, Lord. One day let me see their face before your throne, smiling because you've saved them. You can have the silent times alone, and you must have the silent times alone, but then you can have the silent times even in the middle of contention. In the world we live in today, it's hard to find silent times even when you lay your head down to go to sleep at night. Oh, thoughts, 90 miles an hour, forget that, that's old, 120 miles an hour, running through your mind. But did you know, if you let those just kind of run through there after a short while, they start fading away and they go away. And you can have quiet time with the Lord. There's times when you can control it. In fact, you're always able to have that time alone with the Lord. Wherever, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. It's up to you. And you're the beneficiary. And oh, by the way, God's going to let all your plans fall apart. That hip will be out of joint. You're not going to be able to run. You know, He's going to take it all away until you're doing what's most important. Because He loves you too much for you to be without His fellowship and His communion, you see. In His presence, all our needs are met. There's power in those times of silence with the Lord. Amen.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, He is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, He is my song. You are good. You're good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, He is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, He is my song. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, He is my song. the king of my heart, be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, is my song. You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh,
you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You are good, you're good. Oh, 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 you're never gonna let me down. 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 You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good.